Max Verstappen's journey into the world of motorsport was, in many ways, inevitable. Born on September 30, 1997, in Hasselt, Belgium, he arrived with a racing pedigree that would soon propel him onto an extraordinary path. His father, Jos Verstappen, was a well-known figure in Formula One during the 1990s, and his mother, Sophie Kumpen, was a fierce competitor in kart racing. From the moment Max could walk, he was surrounded by the roar of engines, the scent of burning rubber, and the relentless pursuit of speed. This was more than just a backdrop to his childhood, it was his very foundation. Jos Verstappen, a seasoned Formula One driver who raced alongside legends like Michael Schumacher, was determined to give his son the tools to succeed in motorsport. Having faced the frustrations and limits of his own career, Jos became more than a father to Max. He was a mentor, coach, and sometimes even a drill sergeant. Max's early years were spent absorbing his father's wealth of experience, and Jos was known to be fiercely demanding, pushing his son to the edge of his abilities. Their relationship, intense and sometimes strained, revolved around the idea that greatness required sacrifice. There were no shortcuts. From an early age, Max learned the value of relentless practice, precision, and focus, traits that would later define his driving style. But it was not just Jos who influenced Max's racing prowess. His mother, Sophie Kumpen, had her own legacy in motorsport. In the 1990s, she was one of the most promising karting talents, racing against future F1 stars like Jenson Button. Her technical knowledge and natural feel for racing were just as crucial to Max's development. Sophie, often the calmer counterbalance to Jos's intensity, would offer strategic insights into racing, helping Max sharpen his instincts. Her quiet confidence and keen sense of competition flowed into Max, teaching him that racing was not just about speed but also about patience, timing, and an ability to outthink opponents. The household dynamic was singularly focused. Racing was the language spoken at the dinner table, the subject of every weekend, and the driving force behind every decision. Max was not handed a carefree childhood filled with typical distractions. Instead, he was on a constant, laser-focused mission, nurtured within an environment that lived and breathed competition. Every karting race was treated like a test for a much bigger future. While other children his age were playing casually, Max was already being groomed to be a champion. Jos and Max would spend countless hours on the road, traveling across Europe for karting championships, often sleeping in vans and spending days at the track. It was a life of sacrifices, not just for Max, but for the entire family. Racing demanded financial resources, and while Jos had made a name for himself in F1, his career was not filled with riches. They knew every race was an investment in Max's future. Jos took on the role of mechanic, coach, and strategist, guiding his son not just through victory laps, but also through the inevitable disappointments. From a young age, Max was taught to absorb those losses, analyze them, and return stronger. The relentless push from his father and the technical insights from his mother crafted Max into an entirely different breed of young driver. By the time he reached his teenage years, Max was already considered a prodigy, his aggressive yet controlled driving style reflecting the lessons drilled into him from childhood. He was not just fast, he was strategic, calculating, and entirely undeterred by pressure. However, the weight of expectation was always present. There were times when Max and his father clashed, particularly during the difficult periods of Max's karting career. Jos was known to be hard on his son, with little room for leniency. Max, determined to prove himself, internalized this pressure and transformed it into motivation. For many, the intensity of such a relationship could have been overwhelming, but for Max, it was a source of strength. It was through this familial crucible that he developed an unshakable confidence, a belief that he was destined for greatness. This upbringing, rooted in motorsport tradition, created a young driver with the instincts of a veteran. By the time Max entered the world of professional racing, his experience far outstripped his years. The unique combination of his father's relentless drive and his mother's intuitive understanding of racing had forged Max into a formidable competitor. Growing up in a family so deeply entrenched in motorsport gave Max more than just technical skills. It gave him a mindset, a champion's mentality. From the moment he stepped into a kart, Max was not racing just to win, he was racing to fulfill a legacy, to push beyond the achievements of his parents, and to become one of the greatest drivers the sport had ever seen. Max Verstappen's story begins in the quiet town of Hasselt, Belgium, where he was born on September 30th, 1997, but his upbringing would straddle the line between Belgium and the Netherlands. From the outset, Max's life was anything but ordinary. He was born into a family that lived and breathed motorsport, and racing seemed to course through his veins as naturally as his own heartbeat. His father, Jos Verstappen, had competed in Formula One, while his mother, Sophie Kumpen, was a karting sensation. For Max, the path ahead was not something he stumbled upon, it was laid out before him from the very beginning. Max's first encounters with racing came almost as soon as he could walk. At the age of 4, his father introduced him to karting, a sport that would become the foundation of his racing career. Max was given his first kart, not as a toy but as an extension of his future. It was more than just a way to spend weekends, it was an introduction to a world that would soon consume him entirely. While most children were just learning to ride bicycles or play with friends, Max was already gripping the steering wheel, feeling the pulse of the track beneath him. His father, Jos, played a pivotal role in shaping these early experiences. Jos didn't just want Max to have fun in a kart, he wanted him to learn, grow, and improve from the very first lap. Max, who was a natural, quickly took to the sport with an intensity that mirrored his father's ambitions. However, for all his raw talent, Max understood early on that karting was not about casual participation. It was about commitment, precision, and, most importantly, winning. As Max began competing in junior karting events, it became evident that he possessed a rare blend of talent and fierce determination. He was not content to merely race, he wanted to dominate. His competitive spirit was fueled not only by his father's guidance but also by an innate hunger to push himself beyond his limits. Max was the kind of child who didn't take kindly to losing, even in the smallest of competitions. If he wasn't winning, he was analyzing every turn, every mistake, and every decision with laser-like focus. Every race was a lesson, every loss a motivation to return stronger. By the time he was 7, Max was already competing in higher karting categories against much older and more experienced drivers. His father's influence was undeniable. Jos demanded perfection, not just in performance but in attitude. Max had to learn the hard truths about the sport early on, the travel, the endless hours of practice, and the physical and emotional sacrifices that came with it. Unlike his peers, Max did not have time for the typical distractions of childhood. There were no casual outings with friends, no weekends spent leisurely. His world revolved around karting circuits, engines, and an unwavering focus on being the best. The Verstappens were constantly on the move, traveling across Europe to compete in karting championships. Max, still a young boy, lived a life few could imagine. Days were spent on the track, often sleeping in vans with his father, while nights were filled with discussions about racing strategies, tire pressures, and improving lap times. There were moments of exhaustion, moments when Max was pushed to his limits, but he never complained. If anything, the sacrifices only seemed to fuel his passion. He thrived in this environment of constant challenge, where nothing came easy and every victory had to be earned. Max's junior karting career was a series of defining moments. He quickly rose through the ranks, claiming titles in the Dutch and Belgian championships, often leaving much older competitors in his wake. At the age of 9, Max won his first national championship, a victory that solidified his reputation as a prodigy. The triumphs came in rapid succession, and by the time he was in his early teens, Max had conquered the international karting scene. He won the prestigious European and World Karting Championships, further showcasing his extraordinary talent. But it wasn't just his speed that set him apart. Max had developed a racing style that was aggressive, calculated, and fearless. He wasn't afraid to take risks, to challenge the boundaries of what was possible on the track. This unrelenting pursuit of perfection came at a cost. There were times when Max pushed too hard, times when he would crash out of races due to his uncompromising approach. But rather than temper his aggression, these setbacks only fueled his resolve. Max didn't see failure as a deterrent, he saw it as an opportunity to grow stronger. His father, ever the perfectionist, was a constant presence. Jos was known for being tough on Max, often demanding more than seemed reasonable for a child so young. There were intense moments between them, but the bond they shared was built on a mutual understanding. Greatness required extraordinary sacrifices. Max, for all his natural talent, never took the easy way out. He worked relentlessly, often pushing himself beyond the point of exhaustion. His father's high expectations became a driving force, shaping Max into a young man who thrived under pressure. As Max navigated the junior karting ranks, he made countless sacrifices that most children his age would never understand. He missed out on school activities, friendships, and the carefree experiences of youth. Every choice he made, every race he entered, was a step toward a larger goal. And while the path was often grueling, Max never wavered in his determination. By the time Max Verstappen outgrew his karting years, he had already proven himself to be an extraordinary talent, one who was ready for the next challenge. His early encounters with racing, the sacrifices he made, and the unshakable drive that had defined his childhood would soon propel him into the world of single-seaters. But it was those early years, spent racing through the karting circuits of Europe, that had truly forged Max's character, a relentless competitor, undeterred by obstacles, and destined for greatness. Max Verstappen's story begins in the quiet town of Hasselt, Belgium, where he was born on September 30, 1997, but his upbringing would straddle the line between Belgium and the Netherlands. From the outset, Max's life was anything but ordinary. He was born into a family that lived and breathed motorsport, and racing seemed to course through his veins as naturally as his own heartbeat. His father, Jos Verstappen, had competed in Formula One, while his mother, Sophie Kumpen, was a karting sensation. For Max, the path ahead was not something he stumbled upon, it was laid out before him from the very beginning. Max's first encounters with racing came almost as soon as he could walk. At the age of 4, his father introduced him to karting, a sport that would become the foundation of his racing career. Max was given his first kart, not as a toy but as an extension of his future. It was more than just a way to spend weekends, it was an introduction to a world that would soon consume him entirely. While most children were just learning to ride bicycles or play with friends, Max was already gripping the steering wheel, feeling the pulse of the track beneath him. His father, Jos, played a pivotal role in shaping these early experiences. Jos didn't just want Max to have fun in a kart, he wanted him to learn, grow, and improve from the very first lap. Max, who was a natural, quickly took to the sport with an intensity that mirrored his father's ambitions. However, for all his raw talent, Max understood early on that karting was not about casual participation. It was about commitment, precision, and, most importantly, winning. As Max began competing in junior karting events, it became evident that he possessed a rare blend of talent and fierce determination. He was not content to merely race, he wanted to dominate. His competitive spirit was fueled not only by his father's guidance but also by an innate hunger to push himself beyond his limits. Max was the kind of child who didn't take kindly to losing, even in the smallest of competitions. If he wasn't winning, he was analyzing every turn, every mistake, and every decision with laser-like focus. Every race was a lesson, every loss a motivation to return stronger. By the time he was 7, Max was already competing in higher karting categories against much older and more experienced drivers. His father's influence was undeniable. Jos demanded perfection, not just in performance but in attitude. Max had to learn the hard truths about the sport early on, the travel, the endless hours of practice, and the physical and emotional sacrifices that came with it. Unlike his peers, Max did not have time for the typical distractions of childhood. There were no casual outings with friends, no weekends spent leisurely. His world revolved around karting circuits, engines, and an unwavering focus on being the best. The Verstappens were constantly on the move, traveling across Europe to compete in karting championships. Max, still a young boy, lived a life few could imagine. Days were spent on the track, often sleeping in vans with his father, while nights were filled with discussions about racing strategies, tire pressures, and improving lap times. There were moments of exhaustion, moments when Max was pushed to his limits, but he never complained. If anything, the sacrifices only seemed to fuel his passion. He thrived in this environment of constant challenge, where nothing came easy and every victory had to be earned. Max's junior karting career was a series of defining moments. He quickly rose through the ranks, claiming titles in the Dutch and Belgian championships, often leaving much older competitors in his wake. At the age of 9, Max won his first national championship, a victory that solidified his reputation as a prodigy. The triumphs came in rapid succession, and by the time he was in his early teens, Max had conquered the international karting scene. He won the prestigious European and World Karting Championships, further showcasing his extraordinary talent. But it wasn't just his speed that set him apart. Max had developed a racing style that was aggressive, calculated, and fearless. He wasn't afraid to take risks, to challenge the boundaries of what was possible on the track. This unrelenting pursuit of perfection came at a cost. There were times when Max pushed too hard, times when he would crash out of races due to his uncompromising approach. But rather than temper his aggression, these setbacks only fueled his resolve. Max didn't see failure as a deterrent, he saw it as an opportunity to grow stronger. His father, ever the perfectionist, was a constant presence. Jos was known for being tough on Max, often demanding more than seemed reasonable for a child so young. There were intense moments between them, but the bond they shared was built on a mutual understanding. Greatness required extraordinary sacrifices. Max, for all his natural talent, never took the easy way out. He worked relentlessly, often pushing himself beyond the point of exhaustion. His father's high expectations became a driving force, shaping Max into a young man who thrived under pressure. As Max navigated the junior karting ranks, he made countless sacrifices that most children his age would never understand. He missed out on school activities, friendships, and the carefree experiences of youth. Every choice he made, every race he entered, was a step toward a larger goal. And while the path was often grueling, Max never wavered in his determination. By the time Max Verstappen outgrew his karting years, he had already proven himself to be an extraordinary talent, one who was ready for the next challenge. His early encounters with racing, the sacrifices he made, and the unshakable drive that had defined his childhood would soon propel him into the world of single-seaters. But it was those early years, spent racing through the karting circuits of Europe, that had truly forged Max's character, a relentless competitor, undeterred by obstacles, and destined for greatness. Max Verstappen's ascent through the world of motorsport was nothing short of meteoric. After dominating the karting scene, where he had already established himself as a precocious talent, the question was not whether he would rise to higher levels, it was simply when. Max, under the guidance of his father Jos, had developed a relentless drive and an unshakable belief in his abilities, both of which would propel him into the world of single-seater racing far earlier than anyone could have anticipated. In 2014, at just 16 years old, Max made the leap into Formula 3, a series renowned for producing future Formula One stars. It was here that the world began to take notice of his extraordinary talent. Racing for Van Amersfoort Racing, Max quickly set the championship alight with his aggressive and fearless driving style. Despite his youth and inexperience in car racing, Max displayed an uncanny ability to extract the maximum performance from his car, often outclassing more seasoned competitors. He wasn't just fast, he was relentless, overtaking with surgical precision and showing a maturity that belied his years. His performance in Formula 3 was nothing short of remarkable. He won 6 consecutive races during the 2014 FIA European Formula 3 Championship, finishing the season in 3rd place overall. This streak of victories sent shockwaves through the paddock. Max's aggressive style, combined with his raw speed and fearlessness in wheel-to-wheel battles, left teams and spectators alike in awe. The way he handled high-pressure situations, darting into gaps that others wouldn't even consider, marked him as a racer with an edge. Max's time in Formula 3 was supposed to be a learning curve, a stepping stone toward a more gradual climb up the motorsport ladder. But his performances were so electrifying that it became clear his rise would not follow the traditional path. With each passing race, the buzz around Max grew louder, and soon, Formula One teams began to take notice. Among them was Red Bull Racing, known for their talent scouting and willingness to promote young drivers through their junior team, Toro Rosso. But even in the cutthroat world of Formula One, the idea of a 16-year-old making the jump to the sport's top echelon was almost unthinkable. It was not just the physical demands of driving an F1 car, but the psychological pressure and maturity required to compete at the highest level that made such a leap unprecedented. Yet Max, with his fierce determination and steely focus, was different. Red Bull's team principal, Christian Horner, and head of driver development, Helmut Marko, saw something in Max that few others did. He wasn't just another young talent, he was a generational driver. In an astonishing move that sent shockwaves through the motorsport world, Red Bull made the bold decision to promote Max Verstappen to Formula One for the 2015 season, signing him to drive for Toro Rosso when he was just 17 years old. This decision shattered records. Max became the youngest driver in the history of the sport, making his debut at the 2015 Australian Grand Prix. It was a move that drew both excitement and skepticism. Many questioned whether someone so young, without experience in Formula 2, could handle the immense pressure and complexity of Formula 1. But Max, as he had done throughout his career, silenced the doubters with his performance on the track. From his very first race, it was clear that Max belonged in Formula One. While he did not finish in Melbourne due to an engine failure, his pace and ability to keep up with drivers twice his age were evident. He was unfazed by the challenges that came with driving at such a high level. He had always raced beyond his years, and Formula One was no different. Over the course of his debut season with Toro Rosso, Max consistently outperformed expectations, finishing in the points multiple times, often battling in the midfield with a car that had its limitations. Max's aggressive style, rooted in the fearlessness that had defined his karting and Formula 3 career, became his hallmark in Formula One. He wasn't afraid to challenge established drivers in wheel-to-wheel combat, making daring overtakes that few others would attempt. His bravery on the track drew comparisons to some of the sport's all-time greats, and he quickly gained a reputation as the most exciting young driver in the paddock. His performance at the Monaco Grand Prix, where he battled fiercely with Romain Grosjean before crashing out in spectacular fashion, encapsulated the essence of Max Verstappen, raw, fearless, and constantly pushing the limits. Toro Rosso may have been a junior team, but Max's performances were anything but junior level. His talent was undeniable, and Red Bull Racing, always on the lookout for their next star, took notice. Midway through the 2016 season, Red Bull made a game-changing decision. They promoted Max to the senior team, replacing Daniil Kvyat. This move placed him in a car capable of winning races, and Max did not waste the opportunity. In just his first race with Red Bull Racing at the 2016 Spanish Grand Prix, Max delivered one of the most sensational performances in the history of Formula One. The race was chaotic, with both Mercedes drivers, Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg, crashing out early, but Max kept his composure amidst the chaos. He drove with a maturity that defied his age, managing his tires to perfection and withstanding intense pressure from Ferrari's Kimi Räikkönen in the closing laps. When Max crossed the finish line in first place, he became the youngest driver in history to win a Formula One Grand Prix at just 18 years old. It was a defining moment, not just in Max's career but in Formula One history. His victory in Spain sent a clear message to the racing world: Max Verstappen was no ordinary driver. He was a prodigy, capable of rewriting the sports record books, and Red Bull had unearthed a once-in-a-generation talent. His maturity under pressure, ability to learn quickly, and fearlessness made him stand out in a field filled with seasoned veterans. From that moment on, Max became the focal point of Red Bull's future. His performances continued to improve, and while there were still moments of youthful exuberance, crashes, mistakes, and sometimes overaggression, there was no doubt that he was destined for greatness. Red Bull had recognized his potential early, and their gamble to promote him at such a young age was proving to be a masterstroke. Max Verstappen's rise through the ranks of motorsport was not just rapid, it was unprecedented. From dominating the karting circuits as a child to stepping into the spotlight of Formula One at 17, Max had proven that age was merely a number. His performances in Formula One, especially with Toro Rosso and Red Bull Racing, demonstrated a level of talent, maturity, and competitive spirit that would define his career and set him on the path to becoming one of the sport's brightest stars. Max Verstappen's early career with Red Bull Racing was a wild, unpredictable ride, marked by moments of breathtaking triumph and the inevitable sting of misfortune. From the instant he stepped into the Red Bull car in 2016, it was clear that Max had the talent to achieve greatness, but the path was anything but straightforward. His early years with the team were a blend of exhilarating highs and gut-wrenching lows, a crucible of challenges that would test his patience, resilience, and his ability to adapt. His sensational debut for Red Bull Racing at the 2016 Spanish Grand Prix was a statement of intent. Max had been promoted mid-season from Toro Rosso, a decision that shocked many in the paddock due to his youth and limited experience. But Red Bull saw something in him, and their faith was rewarded almost immediately. When the Mercedes drivers, Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg, collided on the opening lap, Max seized the opportunity. What followed was a masterclass in composure under pressure. Despite relentless attacks from Ferrari's Kimi Räikkönen, Max held his nerve, managing his tires to perfection and keeping a cool head in a chaotic race. When he crossed the finish line, he became the youngest ever Formula One race winner at just 18 years old. That victory in Barcelona was a career-defining moment. It sent shockwaves through the motorsport world and confirmed Max as a force to be reckoned with. But, as thrilling as that win was, it also set the stage for the roller coaster that followed. The early triumph in Spain showcased Max's raw speed and ability to perform under pressure, but Formula One is rarely kind to those who rise quickly. The sport would soon reveal its unpredictable nature, and Max's journey was about to take several sharp turns. Following his historic victory, Max's form was impressive, but Red Bull Racing was far from the dominant team on the grid. Mercedes and Ferrari had superior machinery, and while Max often punched above his weight, he quickly learned that success in Formula One wasn't just about talent, it was about timing, patience, and sometimes, dealing with forces beyond his control. Throughout the 2016 season, mechanical failures, bad luck, and racing incidents often derailed his progress. There were races where his aggressive driving style, which had been his hallmark, led to clashes with other drivers. Max's fearless overtaking attempts, while thrilling for spectators, sometimes resulted in collisions, earning him both praise for his daring and criticism for his lack of caution. One of the pivotal moments in this period came during the 2017 season, a year that tested Max's patience like never before. While Red Bull was competitive, they lagged behind Mercedes and Ferrari in terms of outright pace. For Max, this meant being in a constant battle for podiums rather than race wins. His aggressive nature, developed from years of karting and junior formula dominance, made it difficult to accept being anything other than the best. But it wasn't just the car's limitations that frustrated him. Throughout 2017, Max suffered an agonizing series of mechanical failures. In Azerbaijan, Austria, Belgium, and Hungary, his car let him down, each time in races where he had been on course for strong finishes, possibly even victories. For a young driver whose whole life had been about pushing limits and chasing victory, these moments were soul-crushing. There were public displays of frustration, angry radio messages, visible disappointment, and even a few sharp comments about the car's reliability. However, these were the moments that began to shape Max in ways beyond raw speed. He was learning, albeit painfully, that Formula One requires more than just talent. It demands resilience and the ability to absorb setbacks without losing focus. Every retirement, every mechanical failure, was a lesson in patience. Amidst the frustrations, there were flashes of brilliance. Max's ability to recover from adversity became one of his defining traits. His win at the 2017 Malaysian Grand Prix was a standout moment. After enduring the heartache of multiple retirements that season, Max dominated the race, overtaking Lewis Hamilton early on and controlling the race with remarkable maturity. This victory, his second in Formula One, was not just a testament to his speed but to his growing ability to manage a race from start to finish. It showed the world that he wasn't just an aggressive driver willing to take risks, he was also learning the subtle art of patience and racecraft. However, the roller coaster continued. The 2018 season saw more flashes of brilliance but also more incidents. Early in the season, Max's aggressive nature led to several high-profile mistakes, most notably the crash with teammate Daniel Ricciardo at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, which forced both Red Bull drivers out of the race. The incident was a low point for Max, drawing sharp criticism from both the media and the team. But it also served as a turning point. From that moment on, Max began to balance his natural aggression with a more measured approach. Later that year, at the Austrian Grand Prix, Red Bull's home race, Max delivered one of his most mature performances to date. In a race where the Mercedes drivers faltered, Max held his own under immense pressure from Ferrari, managing his tires and pace to perfection. The roar from the crowd as he crossed the finish line was deafening, and it was clear that Max had turned a corner. He was still the aggressive, fearless driver who would dive into the smallest of gaps, but he had learned to pick his moments. By the time 2019 rolled around, Max had firmly established himself as Red Bull's leading driver. Ricciardo had left the team, and now all eyes were on Verstappen to lead Red Bull's charge. It was in this period that Max's character truly began to shine. He had matured, both on and off the track. He still had that fire, that unquenchable thirst for victory, but he had learned how to harness it, when to push, and when to play the long game. His consistency improved dramatically, and mistakes became rarer. He was no longer just a fast, young driver, he was a complete racer, capable of managing every aspect of a Grand Prix weekend. His performances in races like the 2019 German Grand Prix, where he adapted to chaotic weather conditions to claim victory, and his drive in Brazil, where he outdueled Hamilton in a thrilling race, underscored his growth. Max was becoming the driver Red Bull had always believed he could be, not just a winner, but a future champion. Max's early career with Red Bull Racing was a test of both his talent and his temperament. The mechanical failures and crashes could have easily derailed a lesser driver, but Max used them to forge an even stronger version of himself. He learned that Formula One is as much about perseverance as it is about speed, that patience and strategy are just as crucial as bold overtakes and fast laps. Each frustration, each setback, added a new layer to his racing character, shaping him into the driver who would one day lead Red Bull back to the pinnacle of the sport. Max's early years with Red Bull were turbulent, yes, but they were also thrilling, full of promise and potential. These experiences, both good and bad, taught him the balance between risk and patience, between aggression and control. It was this balance that would prepare him for the ultimate prize, a shot at the Formula One World Championship. Max Verstappen's 2021 Formula One World Championship win was the culmination of years of relentless determination, raw talent, and the deep-seated belief that he was destined to become one of the greatest drivers in the sport's history. The season was one of the most dramatic and intense in the modern era of Formula One, pitting Verstappen against the seven-time world champion Lewis Hamilton in a rivalry that gripped the racing world. The tension between the two drivers, the battle between their teams, Red Bull Racing and Mercedes, and the thrilling showdown in Abu Dhabi would come to define the 2021 season and cement Verstappen's place in motorsport history. From the first race in Bahrain, it was clear that this season would be different. For years, Verstappen had shown flashes of brilliance but had always been hampered by machinery that couldn't quite match the dominant Mercedes. But in 2021, Red Bull had finally given him a car capable of taking the fight to Hamilton. Verstappen seized the opportunity with both hands, winning 5 of the first 10 races and showing a level of consistency and maturity that marked him as a true title contender. Hamilton, ever the fierce competitor, fought back with his trademark precision and tenacity. The two drivers traded wins, often clashing on track in what became one of the most intense rivalries the sport had ever seen. The season was filled with drama, and the relationship between Verstappen and Hamilton grew increasingly fraught. Their clashes at races like Silverstone, where the two collided on the opening lap, sending Verstappen into the barriers at high speed, and Monza, where both drivers ended up crashing out after a wheel-to-wheel battle, exemplified the fierceness of their rivalry. Each incident stoked the flames of tension, with fans, media, and even their teams embroiled in a season-long narrative of titanic struggle. For Verstappen, each race was a test not just of his skill but of his resilience. The pressure to finally dethrone Hamilton, who had dominated the sport for years, weighed heavily on him, but it also fueled his desire. As the season wore on, the championship battle tightened. Verstappen and Hamilton arrived at the final race of the season, the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, tied on points, a scenario that hadn't occurred in Formula One since 1974. It was the ultimate showdown, winner takes all. The stakes could not have been higher, and the pressure on Verstappen was immense. He had fought so hard to be in this position, but now it all came down to one race, one moment. The emotional weight of that day, of everything that had led to this point, was palpable. The race itself was a microcosm of the season, tense, dramatic, and controversial. Hamilton got the better start and led for much of the race, his Mercedes looking dominant on the straights. Verstappen, struggling to match his pace, appeared to be running out of options. But Formula One has always been a sport of unpredictability, and on lap 53 of 58, a dramatic twist occurred. Nicholas Latifi's crash brought out the safety car, neutralizing Hamilton's lead. What followed was one of the most contentious decisions in the sport's history. The race director allowed the lapped cars between Verstappen and Hamilton to unlap themselves, setting up a final lap showdown between the two title contenders. Verstappen, now on fresher tires, saw his opportunity. As the safety car peeled away and racing resumed for one final lap, he attacked Hamilton with everything he had. The tension was unbearable, every corner, every braking point critical. In a move that defined his aggressive racing style, Verstappen made the decisive pass at turn 5, snatching the lead from Hamilton. Hamilton tried to fight back, pushing to the absolute limit, but Verstappen held firm, defending with ice-cold precision. When he crossed the line, the roar from the Red Bull garage and the fans was deafening. Max Verstappen was the 2021 Formula One world champion. The moment was pure, unfiltered emotion. For Verstappen, it wasn't just a race win, it was the realization of a dream he had harbored since childhood. The boy who had spent years traveling with his father to karting tracks across Europe, sleeping in vans, and sacrificing a normal childhood to chase his ambitions had finally reached the pinnacle of motorsport. He climbed out of his car and fell to the ground, overwhelmed by the gravity of the achievement. The image of him sitting on the track, hands in the air, eyes brimming with emotion, captured the essence of what it meant to become a world champion. His father, Jos Verstappen, who had guided him through every stage of his career, was there to embrace him, a moment that symbolized the sacrifices they had both made to reach this point. The victory, however, was not without controversy. Mercedes immediately lodged protests against the way the race had been handled, particularly the safety car procedure. For a time, it seemed that Verstappen's title might be in jeopardy as the stewards reviewed the complaints. But when the decisions were upheld, confirming him as champion, Max was able to finally absorb the magnitude of his achievement. The emotional weight of winning his first world championship was immense, not just for what it represented in terms of personal fulfillment, but for what it meant to the sport. Verstappen's victory broke the stranglehold that Hamilton and Mercedes had held on Formula One for years. It marked the end of an era of dominance and the beginning of a new one. Max had become the first Dutch driver to win a Formula One world championship, elevating him to hero status in his home country and cementing his legacy as one of the most exciting and fearless drivers of his generation. Beyond the personal triumph, Verstappen's championship redefined his career. He was no longer the precocious talent, the young gun with promise. He was now a world champion, a title that had eluded so many great drivers before him. In winning the 2021 championship, he had solidified his place among the sport's elite, proving that he could not only match but defeat one of the greatest drivers in the history of Formula One in a direct, season-long battle. The 2021 season, and the manner in which Verstappen won his first championship, will be remembered as one of the most dramatic in Formula One history. It was a season where Max Verstappen's unwavering determination, raw talent, and fierce competitiveness were on full display. But more than that, it was a season where he learned to balance his aggression with patience, to handle the immense pressure that comes with fighting for a world championship, and to seize the moment when it mattered most. In the years to come, as Verstappen continues to build his legacy, the 2021 championship will stand as the defining moment of his career. It was the moment when all the years of sacrifice, all the ups and downs, finally paid off. It was the moment when Max Verstappen became a legend. Max Verstappen's reign at the peak of Formula One is as thrilling as it is demanding. Having reached the pinnacle by winning his first world championship in 2021, Verstappen now faces a different kind of challenge, one that requires sustaining success in a sport that never stops evolving. While Max's talent is undeniable, and his partnership with Red Bull Racing seems almost tailor-made for domination, the road ahead is fraught with new pressures, shifting dynamics in the sport, and the constant drive to continue building a legacy. As a champion, the first challenge Verstappen will face is living up to his own impossibly high standards. Winning his first title was a culmination of years of hard work, but remaining on top is an entirely different battle. Each year, Formula One presents new technical regulations, competitors with stronger cars, and rising talents eager to dethrone the reigning champion. Verstappen, no longer the hunter but the hunted, will need to adjust to being the one everyone is chasing. While he thrives on pressure, the intensity of being the focal point of every competitor's ambition could weigh heavily over time. Consistency, mental fortitude, and the ability to keep evolving will be essential as he navigates the ups and downs of being the sport's top driver. One of the key elements that will define Verstappen's future is his relationship with Red Bull Racing. Max and Red Bull have created a partnership built on mutual trust and success. Red Bull, under the leadership of Christian Horner and technical mastermind Adrian Newey, has provided Verstappen with the tools to succeed, while Max's talent has pushed the team to its limits. Together, they have formed a formidable unit capable of challenging for championships. However, Formula One is a sport where team dynamics can shift, and drivers can often find themselves at the mercy of technical failures or strategic miscalculations. Red Bull's challenge, particularly in a sport where technological advancements are paramount, will be to keep delivering a car that matches Verstappen's immense skill. The competition from teams like Mercedes, Ferrari, and even up-and-comers like Aston Martin is fierce, and any misstep in car development could cost precious time and titles. Verstappen will need to rely on Red Bull's ability to innovate while also pushing the team forward with his feedback and leadership. He is no longer the young prodigy with nothing to lose, but a seasoned driver who must balance his aggressive racing style with the demands of championship-caliber consistency. The changing landscape of Formula One itself presents another challenge. With the sport constantly introducing new regulations designed to level the playing field and reduce the dominance of certain teams, Verstappen will need to adapt to whatever changes come his way. For instance, the 2022 regulations, which introduced ground effect aerodynamics, forced all teams to rethink their car designs. Max's ability to quickly adapt to these changes has been one of his strengths, but each new rule change brings uncertainty. In the coming years, as Formula One pushes for sustainability goals with the introduction of synthetic fuels and a greater emphasis on energy recovery systems, Max will have to continuously refine his driving style to fit the evolving nature of the sport. There is also the undeniable challenge of competition. While Max is still young, there is always the looming presence of younger talents rising through the ranks, eager to make their mark on the sport. Drivers like Charles Leclerc, Lando Norris, George Russell, and others represent the next generation of stars who, like Verstappen once did, are hungry for success and ready to take risks to achieve it. These drivers, racing for teams with improving resources, will be constant rivals to Max's supremacy. The pressure to stay ahead, to constantly improve, and to not be complacent will be ever present. Beyond the immediate technical and competitive challenges, there is also the broader issue of legacy. Verstappen has already cemented himself as one of the sport's most talented and fearless drivers, but how he is remembered will depend on what comes next. His aggressive driving style has made him a fan favorite and a nightmare for his competitors, but it has also drawn criticism at times for being too reckless. As he continues to mature, Verstappen will likely seek to balance that aggressive edge with a more controlled approach, further refining his racecraft and decision-making. Part of building a lasting legacy is how a driver shapes the team around them. Max is already seen as the clear leader at Red Bull, a role that will only become more significant as he gains more experience. He has the opportunity to not only be the face of Red Bull's success, but to help guide the team's development and direction in the coming years. Drivers like Michael Schumacher and Lewis Hamilton not only won titles, but also left lasting marks on their teams, raising their standards and helping to shape the culture of winning. Max has the potential to do the same at Red Bull, becoming a central figure in the team's long-term dominance. Yet, Verstappen's legacy will not just be defined by his results on the track, but by the mark he leaves on Formula One itself. His aggressive, no-holds-barred racing style has re-energized the sport, bringing in new fans and reminding everyone of the raw thrill that Formula One can provide. He has helped spark interest in the sport in the Netherlands, where he is already considered a national hero, and his influence has contributed to the sport's growing popularity worldwide. As Formula One enters new markets and expands its global fanbase, Verstappen's role as a global ambassador for the sport will only grow. Furthermore, Max's ability to inspire the next generation of drivers cannot be overlooked. Just as young drivers now look up to Hamilton as a benchmark of success, Verstappen's journey, from a karting prodigy to a world champion at such a young age, will serve as a blueprint for future racers. His path has shown that, with the right mix of talent, determination, and the right team behind you, anything is possible in motorsport. Looking ahead, the question is not if Max Verstappen can win more titles, but how many he will win and what kind of impact he will continue to make on Formula One. The physical and mental demands of the sport are immense, and maintaining motivation at the top level can be a challenge. However, Verstappen has shown that he thrives in high-pressure environments and that the thrill of competition drives him. As long as that fire burns, there is little doubt that Max will continue to be a dominant force in Formula One. In the end, Max Verstappen's legacy will be one of transformation. He has already altered the course of Red Bull racing, pushing them back to the top after years of Mercedes dominance. He has helped redefine what is possible for young drivers, breaking records and shattering expectations along the way. And as he continues to evolve and adapt to the ever-changing world of Formula One, Max will no doubt leave a lasting impact on the sport, carving his name among the greatest drivers in its history.